Charles Herring was the man you would have seen if you tuned in to King TV 50 years ago tonight. He joins me now, and we are honored, very honored to have you in our studio tonight. I'm more nervous to talk to you than I have been to talk to senators and some mayors.
Come on.
Because you are a pioneer, and I don't know how you feel about being called a pioneer. How does that feel?
I feel like Ward Bond on the old Wagon Train series. Actually, yeah, I would have been off the air about 6 minutes now, 50 years ago, because the show was from 6:45 to 7.
And what would you have been doing at this time 50 years ago?
Probably
would you
collapsing.
Would you be recapping how the show went? It was just you and another guy.
I'm sure that the program director, Lee Schulman, I'm sure was on hand and came down, and he was always very supportive. I'm sure he was congratulating me on a great show and rah, 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 and, you know, making me believe it.
What was the idea when it all started at King TV 50 years ago? Was the idea really, as I've read, just to satisfy the FCC, or was there a commitment? I know there was a commitment on your part, but was there a commitment on the part of the station?
Oh, there was a definite commitment on the part of King, because just to show you, we had news up here before San Francisco, which was a far larger place in those days, and still is, I guess. And the reason I know this is that in '52, I went on active duty in the Navy for 2 weeks. And since I was down there for 2 weeks, naturally, I was tuning in all the stations. And they had nothing, they had no on-camera television newscasts. They had little short news clips reading narration over slides or even over film, but at no time did you see a person sitting at a desk talking into the camera.
How long did it take to grow from 2 people in the newsroom, you and another guy, to something that they knew was catching on in this market?
Well, I think they knew it was catching on from the get-go. As you know, as primitive as our conditions were to put it on, I know it aroused a great deal of talk. The problem was that there were so few sets in use in those days. I don't know what
6,000 viewers in the market at the time.
I don't know what the figure was, but it didn't amount to much. And you know, if you don't have viewers, you can't sell advertising, and if you can't sell advertising, you can't stay on the air.
So it had to start small.
Yeah.
But one thing that struck me looking at those old clips is the facade. I mean, you know, you had the big build-up to the news, you had the big news set and everything, and it's just like modern times in television. The facade leads you to believe that there's this army of people behind you supporting the staff, and it was you and another guy.
Well, the clip that they've picked there are no films available of the first broadcasts. There's a big problem there because we didn't film it. We didn't shoot it on 16mm film. And the only way you could record anything in those days was a kinescope recording, where you take a movie camera and you take a picture of the video screen. And that's a kinescope recording. And that seems remarkable these days to think that we did that. But that's the only way we could record anything. And so, you know, we don't have any record of that. So the clip they're showing, I think it's from about 1955 or 56. And by that time, we had probably 8 or 10 people in the news department. We had 3 camera people, I imagine, by then.
A huge budget by comparison.
Yeah, I remember it being quite a landmark when some years later we actually got up to $300,000 as a budget for 1 year.
Wow.
Astounding.
That is astounding. If we were to see you in those first days of broadcasting, you would be holding a pipe.
Well, the first week, that was it. And that was over my dead body, but you can't...
I'm trying to imagine me doing a newscast here and holding a cigarette.
Yeah.
I mean...
You can't argue with your boss, and the boss said, let's try this, let's do this.
And the idea being what?
Well, it'd be, you know, casual.
Kind of like a fireside chat or something?
Home, yeah, kind of FDR reincarnated, or something like that.
How did you feel about it?
Oh, I thought it stunk. But what's my opinion against the program directors?
And he also wanted you not to be behind a desk.
Yeah, he wanted me out front. He wanted me to sit on the desk. Of course, the desk wasn't raised like what you have nowadays. It was down on the floor. So he wanted me to sit there, you know, casually smoking the pipe, kind of like you visualize Steve Martin or somebody doing this routine. And of course, the script is here. Then I'm supposed to, you know, knock off a couple of stories and then get up and casually walk around the desk and sit down.
You have to think of what a chapter that Cairo Television would like to forget in their history, news out of the box.
We were out of the box in 1951, but we soon went back in the box after 1 week.
Just like Cairo.
Yeah, we were back in the box.
Well, I can't wait to continue this conversation because I know you have some great stories from the good old days.
They were the good old days.
They were the good old days. Charles obviously has a lot to share about his incredible history of TV broadcasting in Seattle, first station in the Northwest. We'll hear more in just a moment, but we are first going to take a quick break to take a look at your weather forecast. Joining me now, Charles Herring, the Northwest's first TV news anchor. It's a huge thrill for me. It's the 50th anniversary of the first ever TV news broadcast on King Television tonight. Welcome, and thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.
I would really like to talk to you about the changes that have taken place in TV news over the years and what you've observed and where we're doing well and where we're basically flunking.
Well, there, of course, in the technical side is, without question, the biggest development. The satellites, the remote trucks that go out and do on-the-scene reports from almost literally anywhere, thing that we could never do. The weather technology, again, the satellites, all amazing stuff. As to what the end product is, you know, with all these fancy tools you've got, unquestionably, you're putting out a far better product than we could.
Where are we missing?
Well,
because people don't know this, but behind the scenes, we in the business trash the business all the time and talk about where we are falling short.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Well, there's a certain element of tabloid journalism that I see all too frequently. You know, I see newscasts being led with a child molestation or a teacher molesting a teenager, or this comes up all too frequently. I admit when you get to Mary Kay Letourneau, you can't ignore that. But there are a lot of fringe situations where I think it's overplayed. Mm-hmm. You know, downplaying other important stories,
yeah. like what? I mean, there are some stories today we don't see as much of that we would have seen a lot more of years ago, I would imagine.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think that all the stations could do more financial news. I think they could probably do less weather. You know, I mean,
we'll have a weather forecast in 10 minutes.
With all due credit to Jeff Renner and all of his associates, we are overloaded on that. We're probably a little bit under in sports on what we could be doing.
And all of this is driven by, we should say, research that stations spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on, and a lot of us in the business have very strong opinions about that too. How do you feel about the influence that research and consultants have had?
Well, consultants didn't exist when I started, so that was a benefit that I had. I don't know when they came along, but you know, we never heard anything about consultants until sometime in the probably middle or late 50s. And everything's ratings driven.
I know. Before we forget about this, because I know this is important to a lot of people, the most important moment, the moment in television in your many years of anchoring that you will remember most clearly?
I had 3 or 4 first-time events. Besides this first broadcast, I covered the first flight of the 707 prototype, which was the start of the passenger jet age, really, in July of '54. I covered the Dave Beck hearings in Washington, D.C. in 1957, in March and again in May. And that was the first time that any local station had set up a network that went coast to coast, which King did. We had a network of 5 or 6 stations, starting with Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I can't remember the other ones. And we did live broadcasts in the afternoon, straight from Washington, D.C. And we kinescope recorded, as I explained how we did kinescopes. We recorded the morning sessions, which ran from about 10 o'clock to about 12:30 Washington, D.C. time. And those were processed and then sent out here by airplane, airmail, or Air Express.
Save your last memorable moment that you'd like to. Okay, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. We have to take a break, but we'll be back in 2.
Although times have changed, the proud tradition does continue.
And so tonight we want to end our newscast the same way we did back then in 1951. Charles Herring joining us tonight to read the final story of this King 5 newscast. Welcome.
Gene and Dennis, tonight's final story is one that we've brought you many times over the years, but I don't think any of us ever get tired of seeing it. The combat support ship USS Rainier made its much-awaited return to Naval Station Bremerton this morning after spending 6 long months at sea. On board, 7 new dads whose babies were born while they were away.
Are you going to put Dad to work right away and take a vacation yourself, or what are you going to do?
Yeah, I told him I was going to put him to work, but I definitely will be there to help him.
These family members came all the way from Oklahoma to welcome their son. There's nothing happier than a homecoming.
Just like you do it all the time.
Oh.
Nothing to it.
Haven't lost a step.
Like riding a bicycle. Is it?
Sure.
Is it like riding a bicycle?
I guess, yeah.
Okay, your most important or your last memorable moment from
the other one was during the '62 World's Fair, the first Telstar broadcast. That was America beaming a television signal across the Atlantic to Europe. It was a 15-minute show. It was produced by Fred Friendly, whose name is legend in television circles. I think, as I recall, well, I can't remember all the network people, but they were the heavyweights at the time. Probably Chet Huntley for NBC. I don't remember who was on for ABC, maybe John Daly. But the 3 top anchors for the 3 networks and all the network stations in the country, about 500 of them carried this broadcast in the middle of the day, plus 100 on the CBC in Canada and about 100 in Europe, all carried this broadcast. So the audience was estimated at least 200 million. And I wrote this 90-second piece, which featured some stuff from the fair. And that was an immense thrill, you know. That's the biggest audience I ever had, and probably as big as most TV people ever have.
Your biggest interview? Just name the person because we have run out of time.
Dave Beck, hands down.
Charles Herring, pioneer of Seattle TV broadcasting. Thanks so much. It's a huge honor and a thrill for us.
Oh, thank you.
Besides tonight's show, Charles was also kind enough to agree to talk to our morning audience. Watch Northwest Morning News tomorrow at 7:30 to hear more. If you have any comments, you can email us here at viewercenter@nwcn.com. Again, that's viewercenter@nwcn.com. And that's it for tonight's edition of Northwest Extra, an in-depth look at the day's top story. Keep it right here on NWCN for Northwest News and Weather 24 hours a day.